Chapter 62 of Uncle Silas. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Uncle Silas by J. Sheridan Fanu. Chapter 62. A well-known face looks in. You who have never experienced it can have no idea how angry and frightened you become under the sinister insult of being locked into a room, as on trying the door I found I was. The key was in the lock, I could see it through the hole. I called after Madame, I shook at the solid oak door, beat upon it with my hands, kicked it, but all to no purpose. I rushed into the next room, forgetting, if indeed I had observed it, that there was no door from it upon the gallery. I turned round in an angry and dismayed perplexity, and like prisoners in romances, examined the windows. I was shocked and affrighted on discovering in reality what they occasionally find, a series of iron bars crossing the window. They were firmly secured in the oak woodwork of the window frame, and each window was, besides, so compactly skewed down that it could not open. This bedroom was converted into a prison. A momentary hope flashed on me. Perhaps all the windows were secured alike. But it was no such thing. These jail-like precautions were confined to the windows to which I had access. For a few minutes I felt quite distracted, but I bethought me that I must now, if ever, control my terrors, and exert whatever faculties I possessed. I stood upon a chair and examined the oak work. I thought I detected marks of new chiseling here and there. The screws, too, looked new, and they, and the scars on the woodwork, were freshly smeared over with some colored stuff by way of disguise. While I was making these observations, I heard the key stealthily stirred. I suspected that Madame wished to surprise me. Her approaching steps, indeed, was seldom audible. She had the soft tread of the feline tribe. I was standing in the centre of the room, confronting her when she entered. "Why did you lock the door, Madame?" I demanded. She slipped in suddenly with an insidious smirk, and locked the door hastily. "Hish!" whispered Madame, raising her broad palm, and then screwing in her cheeks, she made an ogle over her shoulder in the direction of the passage. "Hish! Be quiet, child, will you? And I will tell you everything presently." She paused, with her ear laid to the door. "Now I can speak, ma chère. I will tell you there is bailiff in the house, 2, 3, 4 such impertinent fellows. They have another as bad as themselves to make a list of the furniture. We must keep them out of these rooms, dear Maud." "You left the key in the door on the outside," I retorted. "That was not to keep them out, but me in, Madame." "Did I leave the key in the door?" ejaculated Madame, with both hands raised, and such a genuine look of consternation as for a moment shook me. It was the nature of this woman's deceptions that they often puzzled, though they seldom convinced me. "I really think, Maud, all those so frequent changes and excitements, they will overturn my poor head." "And the windows are secured with iron bars. What are they for?" I whispered sternly, pointing with my finger at these grim securities. "That is for more than 40 years, when Sir Philip Aylmer was to reside here, and had this room for his children's nursery, and was afraid they should fall out." "But if you look, you will find these bars have been put here very recently. The screws and marks are quite new." "Indeed!" ejaculated Madame, with prolonged emphasis, in precisely the same consternation. "Why, my dear, They told me downstairs what I have tell you when I asked the reason. Let me see." And Madame mounted on a chair, and made her scrutiny with much curiosity, but could not agree with me as to the very recent date of the carpentry. There is nothing, I think, so exasperating as that sort of falsehood which affects not to see what is quite palpable. "Do you mean to say, madame, that you really think those chisellings and screws are 40 years old?" "How can I tell, sire? What does signify whether it is 40 or only 14 years? Bah! We have other things to think about. Those villain men, I am glad to see bar and bolt and lock and key, at least to our room, to keep such fellows out." At that moment a knock came to the door, and Madame's nasal "in moment" answered promptly, and she opened the door, stealthily popping out her head. "Oh, that is all right. You go along, nothing more. Go away." "Who's there?" I cried. "Hold your tongue," said Madame imperiously to the visitor, whose voice I fancied I recognized. "Go away." Out slipped Madame again, locking the door, but this time she returned immediately, bearing a tray with breakfast. I think she fancied that I would perhaps attempt to break away and escape, but I had no such thought at that moment. She hastily set down the tray on the floor at the threshold, locking the door as before. My share of breakfast was a little tea, but Madame's digestion was seldom disturbed by her sympathies, and she ate voraciously. During this process there was a silence unusual in her company, but when her meal was ended she proposed a reconnaissance, professing much uncertainty as to whether my uncle had been arrested or not. "And in case the poor old gentleman be put in what you call stone jug, where are we to go, my dear Maud? To Knoll or to Everston? You must direct." And so she disappeared, turning the key in the door as before. It was an old custom of hers, locking herself in her room, and leaving the key in the lock, and the habit prevailed, for she left it there again. With a heavy heart I completed my simple toilet, wondering all the while how much of Madame's story might be false, and how much, if any, true. Then I looked out upon the dingy courtyard below, in its deep damp shadow, and thought, how could an assassin have scaled that height in safety, and entered so noiselessly as not to awaken the slumbering gamester? Then there were the iron bars across my window. What a fool I had been to object to that security! I was labouring hard to reassure myself, and keep all ghastly suspicions at arm's length. But I wished that my room had been to the front of the house, with some view less dismal. Lost in these ruminations of fear as I stood at the window, I was startled by the sound of a sharp tread in the lobby, and by the key turning in the lock of my door. In a panic I sprang back into the corner, and stood with my eyes fixed upon the door. It opened a little, and the black head of Meg Hawkes was introduced. "Oh, Meg!" I cried. "Thank God! I guessed 'twas you, Miss Maud. I am feared, miss." The miller's daughter was pale, and her eyes, I thought, were red and swollen. "Oh, Meg, for God's sake, what is it all?" "I daren't come in. The old un's gone down and locked the cross door, and left me to watch. They think I care naught about ye, no more nor themselves. I dunna know all, but summat more nor her. They tell her not. She going to get to drink. She's so gonna drink. They say she's not safe, and awful quarrelsome. I hear a deal when father and Master Dudley be a talking at the mill. They think coming in and out I don't mind, but I put one thing and another together, and don't ye eat nor drink not here, miss. Hide this away. It's black enough, but wholesome anyhow." And she slipped a piece of a coarse loaf from under her apron. "Hide it, mind. Drink naught but the water in the jug there. It's clean spring.
Oh, Meg, I know what you mean,
I said, faintly.
Aye, miss, I'm feared they'll try it. They'll try to make away with you somehow. I'm going to your friends arter dark. I daren't try it no sooner. I'll get away to Elverston, to your lady cousin, and I'll bring 'em back with me in a rin. So keep a good heart, lass. Meg Hawkes will stand to ye. Ye were better to me than father and mother, and
she clasped me round the waist, and buried her head in my dress.
And I'll give me life for ye, darling, and if they hurt ye, I'll kill myself.
She recovered her sterner mood quickly.
Not a word, lass, she said in her old tone. Don't ye try to get away. They'll kill ye can't do it. Leave it to me. It won't be, whatever it is, till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll have 'em here long for, so keep a brave heart. There's a darling.
I suppose she heard, or fancied she heard, a step approaching, for she said, "Hish!" Her pale, wild face vanished. The door shut quickly and softly, and the key turned again in the lock. Meg, in her rude way, had spoken softly, almost under her breath, but no prophecy shrieked by the Pythoness ever thundered so madly in the ears of the hearer. I dare say that Meg fancied I was marvellously little moved by her words. I felt my gaze grow intense, and my flesh and bones literally freeze. She did not know that every word she spoke seemed to burst like a blaze in my brain. She had delivered her frightful warning, and told her story coarsely and bluntly, which, in effect, means distinctly and concisely. And, I dare say, the announcement so made, like a quick bold incision in surgery, was more tolerable than the slow imperfect mangling, which falters and recedes and equivocates with torture. Madame was long away. I sat down at the window, and tried to appreciate my dreadful situation. I was stupid. The imagery was all frightful, but I beheld it as we sometimes see horrors, heads cut off and houses burnt, in a dream, and without the corresponding emotions. It did not seem as if all of this was really happening to me. I remember sitting at the window and looking and blinking at the opposite side of the building, like a person unable, but striving, to see an object distinctly, and every minute pressing my hand to the side of my head and saying, "Oh, it won't be, it won't be, oh no, never, it could not be." And in this stunned state, Madame found me on her return. But the valley of the shadow of death has its varieties of dread. The horror of great darkness is disturbed by voices and illumed by sights. There are periods of incapacity and collapse, followed by paroxysms of active terror. Thus, in my journey during those long hours, I found it. Agonies subsiding into lethargies, and these breaking again into frenzy. I sometimes wonder how I carried my reason safely through the ordeal. Madame locked the door, and amused herself with her own business, without minding me, humming little nasal snatches of French airs, as she smirked on her silken purchases, displayed in the daylight. Suddenly it struck me that it was very dark, considering how early it was. I looked at my watch. It seemed to me a great effort of concentration to understand it. 4 o'clock, it said. 4 o'clock! It would be dark at 5, night in 1 hour. "Madame, what o'clock is it? Is it evening?" I cried, with my hand to my forehead, like a person puzzled. 2, 3 minutes past 4. It had 5 minutes to 4 when I came upstairs, answered she, without interrupting her examination of a piece of darned lace, which she was holding close to her eyes at the window. "Oh, madame, madame, I'm frightened," cried I, with a wild and piteous voice, grasping her arm and looking up, as shipwrecked people may their last to heaven. into her inexorable eyes. Madame looked frightened too, I thought, as she stared into my face. At last she said, rather angrily, and shaking her arm loose, "What do you mean, child?"
"Oh, save me, madame! Oh, save me! Oh, save me, madame!" I pleaded, with the wild monotony of perfect terror, grasping and clinging to her dress and looking up, with an agonized face, into the eyes of that shadowy Atropos.
"Save you, indeed! Save! What niaiserie!"
"Oh, madame! Oh, dear madame! For God's sake, only get me away! Get me away from this, and I'll do everything you ask me, all my life. I will, indeed, madame, I will. Oh, save me, save me, save me!"
I was clinging to Madame as to my guardian angel in my agony.
"And who told you, child, you are in any danger?"
demanded Madame, looking down on me with a black and witch-like stare.
"I am, madame, I am, in great danger. Oh, madame, think of me. Take pity on me. I have none to help me. There is no one but God and you."
Madame, all this time, viewed me with the same dismal stare, like a sorceress reading futurity in my face.
"Well, maybe you are. How can I tell? Maybe your uncle is mad. Maybe you are mad. You have been my enemy always. Why should I care?"
Again I burst into a wild entreaty, and, clasping her fast, poured forth my supplications with the bitterest of death.
"I have no confidence in you, little Maud. You are little rogue, petite traîtresse. Reflect, if you can, how you have always treated Madame. You have attempted to ruin me. You conspire with the bad domestics at North to destroy me, and you expect me here to take your part. You would never listen to me. You had no mercy for me. You joined to hunt me away from your house like wolf. Well, what you expect to find me now? Bah!"
This terrific bah, with a long nasal yell of scorn, ran in my ears like a clap of thunder.
"I say you are mad, petite insolente. To suppose I should care for you more than the poor hare it will care for the hound, more than the bird who has escaped will love the oiseleur. I do not care. I ought not care. It is your turn to suffer. Lie down on your bed there and suffer quietly."
End of chapter 62.